am E.J. Lee, Assistant Manager at Whitemarsh Township. Today I'm on site at Dr. Matthew Schwartz's home, member of our Environmental Advisory Board, who is currently in the process of installing solar panels on his home. I believe it has been a long process, and we're finally at this point where the actual panels are physically being installed. I'd like to introduce Dr. Schwartz to come and give a little bit more information to the public on how he has gotten to this point, why he has decided to install solar panels, and how it will benefit himself, his neighborhood, the township, and the environment in general. And we're here with Dr. Schwartz, whose house is being installed with solar panels today. Dr. Schwartz, would you like to give a little more information to the public on how you've gotten to this point and why you've decided to install solar panels into your home?
I'm a resident of Whitemarsh Township and of Whitemarsh Woods, and also a member of the Environmental Advisory Board of Whitemarsh Township. We are all hearing a lot more about renewable energy and solar panels and wind energy and geothermal, and we're all taking a look at reducing our carbon footprints. So it was very important to me, and it was important to my wife, that we do our part. So I began this process a couple of years ago. First, in the Environmental Advisory Board, we were talking about energy efficiency and what the township could be doing. And then, sort of confluent with that, the township actually very conveniently, under the direction of Sarah Earlbaum, updated the ordinance that became more permissive of residents to actually install solar energy systems on their roofs. Once that went through, I chose to alert the Homeowners Association in my neighborhood that I was thinking about doing this, created an artist's rendition, and the Architectural Committee needed to review it and approve of it so that we could get going moving forward. All of the neighbors down the street were given an opportunity to weigh in and make any objection if they had any. It turns out that there was no single objection, and I think most neighbors are quite excited about this process and my putting solar panels up here. They did have to be of a certain color so that it would be muted, and so got the green light and moved forward with identifying an appropriate company that could actually sell to me the system that I chose to purchase and install. So the process then went, after purchasing it, to permitting, and it went through the township, and the Planning Commission approved of it unanimously, and then the Board of Supervisors approved of it unanimously. So it sort of paved the way to moving forward with this project. I'm very excited. Once that happened, I gave the green light to the company, which secured all the materials, and we determined what the start date would be. And over the past 3 days, like a whirlwind, this company has come in, installed a racking system for the panels to be secured, secured all the wiring and electrical through the house and down into some fancy connections in my basement near the power source and the meters, so that Pico Energy could be aware of what's going on, I can be aware of what's going on, and it can be monitored. And now that we're generating our own power, our electric bill will decrease considerably. Probably about 50% of the cost of the electricity over the span of the year will be saved. And speaking about finances, I'd like to go over a little bit about the incentives to actually do this. The federal government gives you 30% of the cost of the entire system, which really is very good. The state money is drying up, and I am part of the lowest group getting the lowest amount of money as that program got phased out. But I'll be getting a fairly considerable amount of money back from the state as well. There are also other incentives that come from the power company. There's something called a solar renewable energy credit, which is approximately right now about $200, $250 per year for every kilowatt of power generation capacity you have in solar panels on your roof. So in essence, I'll be getting something like $1,200 per year from now until 2021, which is great. I will also be, so therefore I'll be paying back my loan. I took out a loan for this at very low interest because some banks want to incentivize actually taking out money and doing this. So when it's all said and done, I will have made back my entire investment, plus I'll be making considerable amount of money in profit. And when I sell my house, they just did a study out in California that showed that among 70,000 homes, depending upon the size of the solar system, the homeowner recoups between 4.5% and 6.5% more on the sale price of their home, which yet again entirely covers the entire cost of the system. So this is actually an incredible investment if you're looking at it that way. In the short term, you have to put out some money, but in the long term, it's really very beneficial. So people should not be afraid of pursuing this. If indeed they've got a southern-facing roof, which I do, fortunately, if they don't have much shading at all by the trees around their property, as long as the sun is beating down throughout most of the year, they're in good shape, and you can start to really seriously think about doing this. There are incentives to move forward, and there are incentives for other forms of energy, nuclear, oil, as we know, even coal indirectly. There are lots of incentives for all these other types of energy. And so that we level the playing field, we can incentivize actually the renewable energy so that it's healthier for our environment, healthier for our bodies, helps reduce climate change, etc. So I think at this point we probably should take a tour of the house, see in specific exactly how the system is organized and designed and functions, and then probably I'll have a chance to answer some additional questions that others might have.
Hi, my name is Andrew Richards. I'm an installer. I've been working almost 2 years now, in this coming August. My educational background, I actually have a master's in sustainable design, so I've been interested in the technology for a while, and this was my first job after getting that degree. I felt a strong responsibility to do something that, was making an impact on the energy usage in this country and where our energy comes from. And certainly solar panels are one of the best things you can do. I mean, we're far too reliant on a lot of non-renewable energy sources and polluting energy sources, and solar panels are for the most part pretty environment neutral. So this was a great job for me to find. It's really a growth industry and a strong job creator, and I think will be for years to come as the industry matures and the panels become more affordable and the technology becomes more widespread. So let's talk a little bit about solar cells. Okay, so here we are standing next to our solar module today. This is a SunTech 185, meaning it stands for 185 watts. It simply refers to the size or the amount of energy the panel produces. It's made up of these squares you see here, which are actually pieces of silicone. This is a monosilicone panel, meaning this piece is actually cut from a single silicone crystal put together, as opposed to polycrystalline, which has a slightly different appearance, a little more wavy appearance to it. To describe the process of when the sun actually produces electricity through the panel, the rays of the sun come down, and the energy within the sun's rays is called photons. And these photons strike the solar cell, which excites the molecules inside of there, and they start bouncing around, which actually creates a charge. Those charges are picked up by these aluminum lines that run through here, and they're then collected at the top. And if you step back for 1 sec, I'll actually spin and show you that all that energy picked up by those aluminum strips actually comes to this junction box here, and then out these two, we call them leads, which has a positive and a negative end. It produces a DC current, direct current, which is different from what we're used to here in the States. All of our plugs, all of our power lines use alternating current.
What you're looking at is the piping that comes off my roof, where these solar panels that you see stacked right here are going to be situated on the roof, creating the direct current that comes down that piping and through that metal tube and enters my house right over here. And it is direct current going into my house, and in a little bit you'll see how that current is actually transferred into a group of inverters that convert the direct current into alternating current, which is the same type of current that runs our household appliances and all the electrical gadgets that we use in the house, including your air conditioner, etc. Right over here, you see the exit of the alternating current as it comes out here and goes into the fancy metering boxes that are shared by myself, the homeowner, as well as the energy company. And you'll see a little bit more about exactly how that connection is made when we go down into the basement. Hi, Matt Schwartzer again. We're in my basement. This is the hot water heater room, and we got the electric panels. And here we have the inverters, which convert the direct current from the solar panels into alternating current so that it can be sort of utilized by the grid and utilized by our homes. Okay, so here's the configuration.
Okay.
The power comes in from the roof panels.
Okay.
Goes through a pipe that you can't see on the camera, drops down there, enters over here,
Okay.
splits up to go to the two inverters.
All right.
Then all that power comes out here, goes in here as alternating current, finds its way here into these switches, a meter, and then back out onto the grid, and actually in a position to be utilized by me, John Q, homeowner, as it comes back out and goes into the general electrical system of the house, and then back on the grid.
Hi again. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we actually attach our racking system to the roof of the house. The first part is we need to figure out where our rafters are, and it's pretty rudimentary actually. We take a mallet and we actually bang across the roof and find the rafters just by listening. Then once we've found them, we snap chalk lines so that we have a nice straight line to attach our we call them L feet. It's literally just a 1/4 inch thick piece of metal shaped in an L with a couple holes. We drive a 4-inch lag screw down through the L foot into the rafter. And if you hit the rafter because the lag either spins or it stops, and you need to make sure that all of those are very snug and tight. The next step is to flash this L foot because we've now penetrated the roof right through the shingle, and if we let water run right over that, we're going to be in some trouble years down the road. So what we take, first we use some adhesive, that's a waterproof adhesive underneath the L foot, but then we actually take a piece of metal-backed butyl flashing, which we melt over the top of the L foot and slide up under the shingle course above where we've set the L foot. So any water running down will run across this butyl tape and prevent it from going in the hole that we've created. It's a very robust connection, and they size these things to stand up to all different types of wind in all different parts of the country. So it's something that you can really count on to hold these panels to your roof. I also want to touch on the wiring of the panels. I showed you earlier the leads that come out of the back of the panel, and then we clip these together in strings of panels, say 7, 8, 9, all depending on the system. The engineers figure that stuff out. So as we clip these together, we just need to make sure the wires are up off the roof, which we do with some simple metal clips. And then at the end of each string, we have a positive end and a negative end. We connect these ends to other wires that we have actually penetrating into the house and running back to the inverter, which we refer to as home runs. So each string is made up of 7, 8, 9 modules, give or take, and 2 home runs at the end, a positive and a negative, which run back to our inverter. The trickiest part of the whole thing is that the panel edge has to lay on what we call the weeb, which is it grounds the panel to the rail. So the first step here when we're laying our panel is we take our little aluminum weeb, it slides right into the rail here, and these little circles are actually like teeth that when we tighten down the mid clamp between the panels, it actually bonds the aluminum frame of the panel to this rail, which is how we ground our array. Should it get struck by lightning, which is less likely, or in case there's a fault within our system, it'll go through our grounding and it'll turn the inverter off. We'll get a ground fault message and we'll know that something's wrong. Next step is we take our mid clamp, just get them set up, get them in place. While Dennis goes and grabs me a panel. And moving panels on the roof is a very highly technical process. Thank you. Now we've all been made known that we're all individually responsible for modules, and at a couple thou a piece, you don't want to
drop them.
You don't want to mess around. Actually, that's not true. Maybe a couple hundred. 500.
Locked on all the leads.
So the key as we're pushing this in is to get them, make sure that module edge is resting on those little circles I showed you earlier, so that we know we're getting a tight bond.
Got it.
You got the panel?
Yep. Just keep that bottom locked in.
Yeah.
Right there is good. Perfect.
Using my leg to keep the module tight this way, tight to the mid
And
clamp.
keep it up and down.
Don't want to over tighten, so you can break this hardware. And then at the end of our row,
These are the ends.
put them on some end clamps.
With the end clamp. Right.
All right, before we lay our next row above us, we've got to get these panels locked together.
Each panel comes with a positive and a negative end.
It's a nice fun game.
Nice.
And we use these little clips, we call them caddy clips, on the bottom edge of the panel to hold the wires up off the roof. And that's the gist of it.
So, Dr. Schwartz, some questions that residents may have concerning installation of solar panel. When is an ideal time to be installing solar panels on your roof? Should you wait for a new roof, or do you need a new roof to install solar panels?
Well, you don't need a new roof unless you're planning on putting it on the roof. It's really, you have some flexibility. There are some companies that actually combine the two, that they can do the roofing and the solar system installation. There are some companies that specialize in just roofing and others that specialize in just the solar. So you have got some versatility there. And you can, but it might be appropriate if you're nearing the time of a new roof and you really want to put solar on, it might be advisable to change your roof first and then coordinate the whole process with the company installing the solar on your roof at the same time.
And in terms of installation, how much physical impact has it had on your home on the inside as well as the outside in terms of wiring and electrical installation and things like that?
That's a good question. There is some drilling through the roof, and the companies that do this are meticulous in making sure that they don't create leaks, but you do have to penetrate the barrier to bring the wiring down into the roof in the attic typically. And then all of those wires converge and are put through piping, essentially, run through the attic and as much as possible in the interior of the house. You can do it in any number of ways, keeping all that wiring internal in the house. I chose to have it punched back out of the house and then run out in tubing along the exterior, along a drain pipe, down to right underneath the paneling and above the concrete over to the metering boxes. And then there's an entry point into the house to bring all the direct current from the solar panels in. That plugs into the inverters that convert the energy to alternating current, and then that energy goes to the metering system and actually is metered internally for me, so I know how much power output is coming from the system, and then that power that goes back out of the house into the general Pico energy measuring meter, and there's also some other metering for the solar system outside. And we can use that information to see what percentage of my power is being generated from the solar panels and what I'm drawing from the system. And on a very sunny day, in the wintertime, for instance, when I'm using gas heat and not much electricity, I might be generating much more electricity at the time than my home is using, in which case it sends the power onto the grid and I get paid for it. It turns the meter backward.
Wow.
So, right, so I'm a power generating system and I get credits for that. So I hope that answers your question.
What is the average turnaround time to gain back the money that you've invested into the solar panels?
For the entire system, if you take into account the entire expense of the system and subtract out the financial incentives, and then you take into account the renewable energy credits that you get, and the cost savings from cheaper energy, or just lower costs on your bill, it's going to take, depending upon how the weather is, between 5 and 7 years for me to recoup all the costs.
Wow.
But then after that, remember, I'm going to be making all that money back again 1.5 times more. So for an initial investment of 100%, I get 250% back. So if you think that you're going to be in the home for a while, it's a great investment.
Well, Dr. Schwartz, I thank you for taking the time to open up your home and your project to the township and educating the rest of us on how beneficial solar panels are. One final question is how does this project benefit you and your family, your neighborhood in the township, and just the world in general?
Well, I'm happy to speak on that. I think it benefits my family. I get to show my kids. My wife and I are standing for doing something that everybody talks about, but we're trying to put our money where our mouths are, and demonstrate to our kids what we all can do to be responsible for the environment first. For the township, I'm hoping that this educational process lowers the resistance or increases the allure of actually moving forward with this sort of an enterprise, sort of taking the mystery out of it, if you will. And for society as a whole, our carbon footprint will reduce. We're going to be drawing less power from the grid because part of us will be off-grid with respect to electricity. What that means to society as a whole is we won't need as much power to be generated. We do have 100% wind powering the equivalent of the energy that we use from the grid. We changed our electricity provider so that we could do that and actually put less carbon into the environment using wind. But by using less power from the grid, there's less soot and carbon dioxide and other pollutants like mercury put forth into our environment from coal-fired power plants, of which the country draws about 40–45% of its power. We don't get nuclear here at our home, but many people in Pennsylvania get nuclear power, and you don't need to generate as much electricity from nuclear. So it will help us as a society reduce our carbon footprint if everyone watching decides to really truly examine whether or not you've got the capacity to do something like this. I mean, the incentives are there and the support is there, and it really will forward the ball down the field much more rapidly if each of us at the local level take it upon ourselves to reduce our carbon footprint. And if you're financially making money from the process and it's not costing you, and it can only help the environment, I say have at it. So let's all work together as a community and promote renewable energy. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found this show to be informative as well as educational in assessing your energy consumption and how you can affect the world. I'm EJ Lee, Assistant Township Manager, White Marsh Township.